Betrayal. We've all heard the word, but could it be why you're not healing? Could it be why you even got sick in the first place? I always talk about a perfect storm of how we got sick, and really going upstream and looking at what these storms are in our life. Well, man, this is a big one. Betrayal. This isn't, as you'll find out, the average stressor. And this episode will give us clues if is why betrayal could be a part of your story. And I think one of the best parts about this episode is she really gives us the stages on how to get out. So stay tuned. This one will be one that you might want to share, because when you go through it, you're going to say, oh, okay, this is partly me, but I also know somebody else. Check it out.
Welcome to Cellular Healing TV. I'm Ashley Smith, and today we welcome Dr. Debi Silber, who is founder of the Post Betrayal Transformation Institute. She's a holistic psychologist and a health, mindset, and personal development expert. She's here to talk about betrayal and how an unhealed betrayal is impacting our health, work, and our relationships. Wow, I cannot wait for this conversation. So let's get started and welcome Dr. Debi and of course, Dr. Pompa to the show. Welcome both of you.
Thank you. Looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, me too. I said even before we got on air here that, I'm just so intrigued. I look at my history, and I really wanted my wife to even be on here. And I said that just because, we have such a story, and to impact or to unfold our story and how betrayal is a part of it. I can almost not do it justice. There might be a part 2 to the show. But
I just need an invitation. That works.
Yeah, exactly. But when we look at people that can't get well, when we look at people, how they get sick, I always see it as a perfect storm. Matter of fact, I train my doctors to unravel the perfect storm in someone's life, meaning it's never just physical. It's physical, chemical, emotional, and there's typically 3 stressors that come together. Bam, it happens. And, this is very specific betrayal. And I think obviously we're going to unravel that today. And it's emotional impact, of course, but its impact on our physical body and how it could keep us from healing. It starts with your story because, obviously you've been there. You've been on some major networks. You've done 2 TED Talks on this topic. It's taken off, #1 best-selling book. So thank you for being here, but share your story.
Of course. Thank you. And thank you for just giving me an opportunity to shed light on this topic for those who don't realize how big of an issue betrayal is. So you don't study something like betrayal because you want to, you study it because you have to. And I was no different. I've been in health, mindset, personal development since 1991. And it was my own betrayals. First, it was my family, and I'm the most family-oriented person. But I didn't, I guess, quite learn all the lessons I was meant to learn from that experience. So I had another opportunity, and this time it was my husband, blindsided, devastated, what anybody goes through. But I was desperate to understand this. And for me, when I want to learn something, I go to the experts, I go where the information is. How can I learn about this? So got him out of the house. And one of the lessons I learned that was consistent to both of my betrayals was I wasn't even on my own to-do list. It was about everybody else. I had 4 kids and 6 dogs and this thriving practice, but I never took my own needs seriously. So one of the first things I did, maybe not what everybody else would do, but one of the first things I did was enroll in a PhD program in transpersonal psychology, the psychology of transformation and human potential. I was just obsessed with that because I was changing and I didn't quite understand what was happening. Anyway, it was time to do a study. So I studied betrayal. What holds us back? What helps us heal? And what happens to us physically, mentally, and emotionally when the people closest to us lie, cheat, and deceive. And that study led to 3 groundbreaking discoveries, and I'm happy to share the discoveries and everything that's happened since.
Yeah, and it led to even to a study that I want you to share, which is part of that. So, let's back up just a moment, right? We're saying betrayal. What does that even mean? Why does it hurt? I'm saying, why is it more impactful than other things, right? What are we talking about?
Well, I define it as the breaking of a spoken or unspoken rule. every relationship has a set of rules. Think about it. I was going to be here today. We were going to meet and chat. And if I didn't, well, I would have betrayed you. I mean, it wouldn't have devastated you, right? But the way it works is the more we trust, the more we depend on someone, the bigger the betrayal. So for example, a child who's completely dependent on their parent and that parent does something awful, that's going to have a different impact than, let's say, your coworker taking credit for your idea. Still hurts, but it won't have the same physical, mental, emotional impact to it. But it has lots of faces. It could be your best friend telling your secrets, your partner having an affair, your coworker taking credit, you know, your a partner taking the company funds. I mean, it's endless.
Yeah, I just, you know, again, you just brought up things, right? We can all go through, and there's some level of scale, meaning you just said things. It's like, it happened to me, it happened to me, it happened to me. I mean, is there a building effect? I mean, or, you know, meaning that everyone has betrayals. So at what point does it start causing disease, sickness, and not healing in the body?
Yeah, sure. Well, first I'll tell you how you even know if someone hasn't healed, because we see it in health, work, relationships. Like I'll see it in relationships. And it just, I thought about this when you said that. If you have repeat betrayals, it's an unhealed betrayal. Because people say all the time, why is it that I keep I have the same boss or the same, you know, friendships or the same partner? Is it me? Yes, it is. You haven't learned whatever it is you're supposed to learn. So you keep getting opportunities to learn whatever that is. So if it's a repeat betrayal, it's an unhealed betrayal. But then there's the other thing that I see all the time where someone puts that big wall up. They're like, nope, been there, done that. No one's getting close to me again. And they think that's coming from a place of strength, but no, it's not. It's an unhealed betrayal. They've been so hurt that they're just protecting themselves at all costs.
So does it tie into some exact physical things? You know what I'm saying? In other words, if I was listening to this, I'd be like, well, you know, are there physical symptoms that ties in specifically with this?
Absolutely. You know, there's, out of the 3 discoveries, one of them was that there's this collection of symptoms so common to betrayal, physical, mental, and emotional. It's known as post-betrayal syndrome. And we've had over 10,000 people in the last year and a half take the quiz. And I actually pulled some stats I want to share with you. But what's so interesting is we've all heard time heals all wounds. I have the proof. When it comes to betrayal, that's not true. There's a question on the quiz that reads, is there anything else you'd like to share?
Do we have I should ask Ashley this. Do we have the quiz for our viewers to take? How can they access that?
Oh, I could just give so the link would be the PBT, as in Post Betrayal Transformation, thepbtinstitute.com/quiz.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Because I want everyone to take it, obviously.
So there's a question that reads, is there anything else you'd like to share? And people say things like, my betrayal happened 40 years ago. I can feel the hate. My betrayal happened 35 years ago. I'm unwilling to trust again. My betrayal happened 10 years ago. It feels like it happened. It felt like it happened yesterday, you know, but I did pull some stats, and I think you're going to find these really interesting. So, just a few. 94% deal with painful triggers. Now, with triggers, this could be full-blown PTSD symptoms, where your body is responding as if it's happening right there again. So, you know, we think it's just reserved for war vets. No, it's for betrayal happens too. Physical, these are just the physical symptoms. 71% have low energy, 68% have sleep issues, 63% extreme fatigue, 47% weight changes, and 45% digestive issues. And that's anything. That's constipation, diarrhea, IBS, Crohn's, I mean, you name it. And it makes so much sense. What I found so interesting about just the gut issues too, think about what the gut does: absorbs, digests, processes food. Isn't a betrayal difficult to absorb, digest, and process, right? And, you know, so that's just that. Then here's some mental ones. 78% are overwhelmed, 70% disbelief, 64% are in shock, and 62% unable to concentrate. So do you just mix the physical with the mental? And you can see how challenging that is. And now I'm going to throw in some emotional symptoms, the most common. 88% experience extreme sadness and 83% anger. You just mix sadness and anger together, and that could be a lethal combination. 82% are hurt, 80% experience anxiety, and 79% are stressed. Now, here's why I wrote the book, Trust Again. 84% have an inability to trust. 67% prevent themselves from forming deep relationships because they're afraid of being hurt again. 82% find it hard to move forward. 90% want to move forward and they don't know how.
Well, you got a lot of people's attention, I would argue here.
Mhm.
Okay, so the
Yep.
study revealed some breakthroughs, right? Because my mind, again, I'm thinking as my viewer and listener, it's like, okay, great. Okay, this sounds like it might be me. I'll take the quiz, but I already know it's probably me. Okay, what the heck do I do about it? Talk about the study because it did lead to some big breakthroughs that people need to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of them was that there is this post-betrayal syndrome. It's real and it exists. That was one. These are the other two. At first, I was studying post-traumatic growth, like the upside of trauma, how that trauma, regardless of whatever it is, leaves you with a new awareness, perspective, insight that you didn't have beforehand.
Right.
But I thought about it and I said, I've been through death of a loved one. I've been through disease. I had peritonitis. I was in the ICU for 11 days. So I know other traumas, but this felt so different. I didn't want to assume. So I asked my study participants and I said, if you've been through other traumas, does betrayal feel different for you? Hands down, unanimously. They said, oh my gosh, it's a totally different animal. So first of all, it needed a new name. So the healing of betrayal is now called Post Betrayal Transformation. But here's why. When you lose, let's take someone you love. You grieve, you're sad, you mourn the loss, life will never be the same, but you don't necessarily take it personally. Betrayal is personal. You take it
Okay, that was part of
personally.
my question because I'm like, why is this different? Like,
Yeah.
a lot of people, have abandonment issues, right? Or different, why is this different? I guess the answer is that it's so personal. Am I right?
It feels so personal. So you take it it feels so intentional. So you take it so personally, and then the entire self has to be completely rebuilt. Rejection, abandonment, confidence, worthiness, belonging, trust. Those are huge. They all get shattered. So if I were to come up with an equation, it would be post-traumatic growth, like the upside of healing, plus rebuilding the self equals post-betrayal transformation. And that's why someone who is completely healed from a betrayal is a warrior. Because think about it. This is the person you felt the closest to. This is the person who said, you're safe. I got you. Your safety, your level of safety and security is assured. And that's the very person who shatters it. So there's a lot to heal from. The other discovery was that while we can stay stuck for years, decades, a lifetime, and many of us do, if we're going to heal, we're going to move through 5 stages.
Yeah.
And we also know what happens physically, mentally, and emotionally at every stage. And we know what it takes to move from one to the next, which means now that healing from betrayal is predictable. And I'm happy to go through the stages.
Yeah,
I
want you to go through the stages because that's that's the key to breaking through here, obviously, right?
Absolutely.
So let's do that because I want to give my viewers a vision of what this looks like.
And they will see now, there are so many people probably watching, listening who say, oh, no, mine happened 30, 40 years ago. And I'm telling you, they will be stuck in one particular stage. You'll see exactly why. The stage 1, this is like a setup stage. And I just saw this with every single study participant. If you imagine 4 legs of a table, the 4 legs being physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. What I saw with everybody was a real heavy lean on the physical and the mental and really neglecting the emotional and the spiritual. So what does that look like? It looks like we're really good at thinking and doing and not really prioritizing the feeling and being. The feeling and being, I mean, that's where our intuition lies. We turn that down. Easy for that table to topple over if we're only centered on 2 legs. That's the same with us. That's not to say if you're busy, it's a setup for betrayal. It's just what I consistently saw. Stage 2, we're blindsided. This is the shock, D-Day, Discovery Day. And this is the breakdown of the body, the mind, the worldview. And, one of my study participants said, what it feels like? It feels like every negative emotion you can experience, getting punched in the gut and losing a child in a crowd at the same time. It feels like that. Shock. Total shock. So think about it. When you've been shocked, you've ignited the stress response. Now you're headed for every single stress-related symptom, illness, condition, disease. Your mind is in a complete and total state of chaos and overwhelm. You cannot wrap your mind around what you just learned. And your worldview is shattered. Your worldview is your mental model. These are the rules. This is how it works. Don't go there. This person's safe. And in a moment, it's totally shattered, and a new mental model hasn't been constructed yet. So this is by far the scariest stage. But think about it. If you were walking down the street and the bottom were to bottom out on you, what would you do? You'd grab hold of anything to stay safe and stay alive. That's stage 3. Survival instincts emerge. It's the most practical stage. If you can't help me, get out of my way. How will I survive this experience? What do I do? Who can I trust? Where do I go? Here's the trap. Once you've figured out how to survive, because it feels so much better than the shock and trauma of where you've been, you're like, okay, I'm good. You haven't even transformed yet.
Yeah.
But it's such a relief to just be alive based on that. So now what happens is you're not meant to be here long, but because you're here, you start getting these these secondary gains, these small self benefits from being here. You get to be right. You get your story. You get someone to blame. You get a target for your anger, right? You get sympathy from everybody you tell your story to. You don't have to.
I would argue most people function right here their whole life, if they don't break out of it. It's safe.
And I'm going to get you in so deep so you see why you this is where people stay. Exactly. You're 100% right. And this is where they stay. They get so much benefit. And then the mind starts doing things like, well, you know what? Maybe you're not all that great. Maybe you deserve it. Maybe, and then it gets even worse because now you start doing that. You're not happy with your body, with your health, with your relationships, with your finances, with your life. So here's where, you start using things like food, drugs, alcohol, work, TV, keeping busy, because you're not happy, but you don't think it gets any better than this. Here's where you resign yourself to thinking this is good as it gets. So I don't know, I guess I'll just be okay with it. And when you're in this place, you could stay there for life. So this is the group where they've gotten so used to being like this, with this identity, being in this space, they have no idea there's a level 4 and stage 4 and stage 5. So the people who come to see you, right, who, for their illness, the majority, they're in that stage 2, stage 3.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. So anyway, if you're willing to let go of some of those benefits, and willingness is one of the biggest words here, you can move to stage 4. Stage 4 is finding and adjusting to a new normal. Here's acceptance. Here's where you realize, you know what, I cannot undo what happened, but I can control what I do with it. So I always liken this to, if you've ever moved to a new house, office, condo, apartment, your stuff isn't there just yet. All your stuff isn't there. It's not quite cozy, but it's going to be okay. And when you're in this space, you're turning the stress response down a bit. You're not physically healing just yet, but you're not causing the massive damage you were causing in stage 2 and stage 3. Mm-hmm. And what's so interesting about this stage also is, think about it. If you were moving, you don't necessarily take everything with you. I saw friendships change here. If your friends weren't there for you, you've outgrown them. If they're just indulging in, like low energy gossip, whatever it is, you don't have the space for it. You're on a different level. So people say to me all the time, Dr. Debi, is it me? Yes, it is. You're transforming and you've just outgrown them. Anyway, when you're in that space, making it your own, accepting, healing, you can move to stage 5. And that's healing, rebirth, and a new worldview. The body starts to heal. You didn't have the bandwidth for eating well and exercising, self-love, self-care. You were surviving. Now you do. Your mind, you're making new rules, new boundaries, new everything. And you have a new worldview based on your experience. And the 4 legs of the table, remember in the beginning, it was all about the physical and the mental. We're solidly grounded because now we're paying attention to the emotional and the spiritual too. Those are the 5 stages.
Right. Yeah. And what do you see? I mean, how do we bring someone along there? Right. I mean, if I was watching this again, it's like, okay, great. Maybe you're stuck in 2, maybe you're stuck in 3, but I mean, how do you advance? I mean, can you do it yourself? Do you need help?
I'll tell you, the study proved, and I saw it just even with my own experience, we need support more than ever, but this is a time where we're the least likely to seek it because there's so much judgment, so much shame, so much embarrassment. I mean, that's honestly, that was one of the biggest reasons why I wrote the book. I said, okay, if they're not going to seek support, let them just in the privacy of their own home at least get a sense of support. But that's exactly why we created the community. But yeah, I mean, we need that. There were actually 3 groups in the study who didn't heal also. And that was a really big factor. Support was key. What was so interesting too, you know, speaking of health, I know that's your wheelhouse. There was one group, and this was the group where the betrayer had no consequences. So whether it was because of religious reasons, financial fears, not wanting to break up a family, or just fear, period, they tried to overlook it. They tried to put it aside. The only thing I saw in that group was a further deterioration of the relationship. And by far, hands down, that group was the most physically ill.
So wait, so you said the betrayer, I'm going back, had no
Yeah.
consequences. So,
Yeah.
So therefore, if you are the person betrayed,
Yeah.
it's the person who you feel betrayed you didn't have consequences?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying? Okay. All
Yes.
right.
So when they tried to put it behind them because they just wanted, you know, they wanted to act like everything was okay or whatever. Now, the biggest challenge here, and I see this, listen, this was what happened in my own instance. There's got to be this complete and utter death and destruction of the old relationship, of the old you. And that's the only way you can rebirth something new. But if you're unwilling to let go of that old, that can't happen. But rebuilding is always a choice, whether you rebuild yourself and move on. That's what I did with my family. Or if the situation lends itself and you want to, you rebuild something entirely new with the person who hurt you. And my husband and I married each other again not long ago.
Two things. Okay.
Yeah.
So the betrayer, I mean, wouldn't most often they be clueless because of their own wounds that they even betrayed this person? You know what I'm saying? Meaning that so many people are like, you know, really, you know, that's part one.
2 types of people. Sometimes a betrayal shocks the person who did the betraying enough to say, what the heck was I doing? And it wakes them up, just as the person who's betrayed is shocked. The person who was the betrayer is shocked, and then their transformation is underway as well. But then the other side of this is, you know, that the discovery day shows you who you're really with. So it reveals one of 2 things.
Yeah, right. I mean, you know, evaluate that, especially if it's a pattern. Yeah. Okay, but can't we just change our perception of the situation, the betrayer or the betrayal? Meaning, if we change our perception, you know, our world becomes, you know, how we view our world, right? So, you know, meaning that I can't change the way the betrayer looks at it, right? So I can't convince him or her that they've even betrayed me. And if, you know, there's no consequence, which I think most often there wouldn't be for them because they go on with their life, then isn't now, okay, I can't let that affect my life, right? So I have to change the way I view the betrayal and the person who betrayed me. Isn't that the key?
That's really important. And what's most important is, and that's why anybody who comes into our community, it's all about the betrayed person healing. And they don't want to do that necessarily because they're afraid of what's going to show up. You know, what's going to happen if they're at their physical, mental, and emotional best. What usually happens is they've completely outgrown their betrayer. So they don't want to risk that. So it's almost like here, if I do this thing here, when someone's betrayed, right? Here's where they started. Our work is to get them to their physical, mental, emotional best, right? But what they do is they keep doing this because they don't want to outgrow that person. But our work is just getting them here. So when they are so rock solid here, they're not moving. Either this person says, I better step up my game for real, right? Or they just go their own way. But the work is here. Or when they're just staying here, you know, eventually you get this thing, right? Where this person's like, who are you? And you're like, I'm not the least bit interested in you.
Yeah, you know, I guess my brain's just stuck on this poor person whose betrayer is, you know, because you said so many of them don't heal. I don't remember the percentage, but it was a high percentage who don't heal because their betrayer didn't have consequences. I'm thinking in my mind, you know, well, crap, you know, it's like, you know, how can we just change the perception of that reality and flip it so it's not the case, right? I hate the fact that somebody's future happiness would be determined by whether there's consequences from the, the betrayer or the herder, if you will.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
what's even crazier about it is this person, think about it, they could have done something 10, 20, 30, 40 plus years ago. They don't know, care, or even remember.
Right.
And look at the life that this person is, look at the choices they're making, the health they have, the things they're not doing, the levels of intimacy they're afraid to get to because of what someone did years ago. That's the biggest crime right there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I would
Mhm.
argue that most people's betrayers, they probably moved on, then clueless as they are, and you'll never convince them, nor is it your
Right.
job to.
Mhm.
So again, I think the responsibility then is forget about them. You've got to perceive your betrayal is somehow a positive, right? Somehow is like, okay, all right, even if I brought it on, I kept choosing it. There's a lesson there, but let me be better from it. Is there a process that you help people with that? Because if we can get them to
Absolutely.
perceive it differently, we can change their world.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. But sometimes they feel they have too much to lose when they give up that story, because that story has become their identity.
I know it becomes an identity. I
Yeah.
agree. And my gosh, what would I be without that story?
uh,
I believe me, I face that all the time. So what
Yeah,
do you
yeah.
do with that?
Well, then, it's like, for example, I remember I had a woman, she came in, she goes, well, it's like, arms full that I want to heal. I'm like, no, you don't. No, you don't, because you have to give that whole thing up and
Yeah.
all the benefits you're getting. They don't realize, but what I try to do is tell them what's waiting for them when they do. First of all, think about it. They get a new story. They get a much better story. They get to be the hero or the heroine of their story. They get to stop this accelerated aging, that's going on. They get opportunities they never would have had access to because they're so busy focused on the past, but sometimes they don't trust. And that's the biggest issue. They don't trust
Yeah.
themselves. That, because they don't know who they'd be healed, they stay with what's familiar.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Let's talk to the people in stage 3, because I think
Mhm.
that, I think it's the most dangerous place, right?
It
Because it is,
is.
in fact, the most functional, if you will, right?
Yes.
It's like a functional alcoholic, right? It's like they're
Mhm.
going about their life, but yet, they're absolutely not happy. So, here they are, right?
Mhm.
And we want to show them that the future or their even existence, could be even better.
Mhm.
Right. And so talk to that person right now as if you would if they were sitting across from you. There the person is, they're stuck in 3, and their life is like, well, I'm getting such benefit from all of this. And my gosh,
Mhm.
these people I keep away. And this is, I mean, the stories, right? I mean,
Oh, I hear it every
yeah.
single day.
So that person is in front of you right now.
Yeah.
What do you say?
I'm going to give you 2 visuals because it's going to explain it so well. And this person will see this and feel this. One is, I picture this trapeze. You're holding on. Here's your stage 3, holding on for dear life. You even see stage 4, and you can even grab onto that, that bar. But think about it. You're not going anywhere unless you let go of that first hand. So
Right.
they're determined to hold on to that stage 3, but it's only when they let that go can they move forward. So that visual sometimes helps, and I have another one too.
Okay.
This is going to explain it so clearly, because I think we think resilience and transformation is the same thing. Bouncing back, restoring, bringing back what was lost, totally different thing. So let's take this analogy of a house. Let's say the house needs a boiler, and you get a boiler. That would be resilience. Or it needs a roof. You get a roof. That would be resilience. Here's trauma and transformation. A tornado comes by, levels the house. New boiler's not fixing it, and a new roof's not fixing it. Now, here's the challenge, because you have every right to stand there at the lot where your house once stood and say, this is the worst thing that's ever happened, and you'd be right. And you can call over everybody you know, say, isn't this terrible? They'd all agree. And you actually can mourn your house for the rest of your life. However, if you choose to rebuild the house, why would you build the same one? There's nothing there, right? You could build the most magnificent house you ever want. That's what's waiting for you when you're willing to let that go. But they'd rather stare and cry at the house.
Maybe the danger though is rebuilding a new house with new features, but
That's
yet
it.
but yet it's still new features, right? Meaning
That's it.
it's not a different foundation, right? That's so you end up with a house with the same problems, right? But anyway.
That's it. It's the fear of the unknown. I always say, when the pain of where you are becomes greater than the fear of the unknown, that's when you move. And until then, you're staying in it, not because it's good, only because it's so familiar. But what I found is as much as that stage 2, those people find the healing because they're desperate to feel better. The stage 3 almost need it more.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a more dangerous place because you've solved your problem, right? But yet, so, okay, let's say this, like, because maybe people are out there. So I think we kind of hit this, but it's worth reviewing, I guess. So symptoms that you haven't solved your problem and you're in fact in stage 3, physical, emotional symptoms, like what does that person look like?
Yeah, I'll tell you exactly what that person, let's call her Sue, because this is the person I see every single day.
Okay.
She's exhausted. She can't sleep. So she's taking something to help her sleep. She's exhausted. So she's using sugar and caffeine for energy. So now she's gaining weight. She's irritable. She can't focus. So her doctor puts her on mood stabilizers or anti-anxiety meds. She's lost her confidence. So now she may not be performing well at whatever work she is, but yet she doesn't have the confidence to speak up, or to try to do anything differently. She is just trying to stay alive. She is irritable. Her adrenals have tanked. Her immune system is shot. She's gaining weight. She is just a shell of herself trying to stay alive.
And are there other stages of that? Meaning that, like, people that are functioning a little bit better, but still in it, right? You know what I'm saying? I mean, do you see different levels of damage, I guess? And is it proportional to their level of betrayal?
It is proportional to their level of betrayal and also their willingness to see things for what they really are. Like, there are instances where they have what to work with if they're trying to rebuild with that person. And in other cases, it's a complete and total waste of time. Now, I always say you just need to work on you, period. But what I see is the person who is just spending their energy trying to convince or prove or whatever it is, like, don't you see the harm you caused? Don't you see the damage you caused? I mean, when we're spending our time, our effort, our attention, it's like, best case scenario, you only have 100%. If you're spending 40, 50, 60 of it on the other person, you only have what's left to work on you. So they're spending time in an area that's not serving them as well.
How often is it somebody that's gone in somebody's life, or someone who's still present in somebody's life and they're still day in, day out functioning with that person? Like, what do you see the most of, or
Yeah, it's really all different kinds of combinations. There's no one over another, but I see it's very common. If there are no consequences, that person experiences repeat betrayal, repeat betrayal, repeat betrayal. Their body is tanking. I mean, they are so unhealthy. They're just emotionally, they're so spent. They're so depleted. They're taking it personally.
Right. Yeah.
So as if it weren't bad enough, they think it's them.
Do they have a lot of relationship, debris around them?
They do.
Yeah.
Because think about it. It's also, when it comes to betrayal, you also need to be really careful who you talk with. I mean, and I know there are so many people who they say, oh, I'll go see a therapist. Now, that could be great. Talk therapy is a piece of this, but this stuff gets lodged in the cells. I mean, you need to dive deep with healing here. But although that hits one level, if that therapist isn't highly skilled when it comes to betrayal, it does more harm than good. Okay. But it's also through the lens of the other person. Like, for example, let's take a husband and wife, and the husband is a typical narcissist. He goes from one affair to another, and the wife confides in her mother-in-law, right? Typical scenario. But that mother-in-law just wants to know everything's okay and wants to know you're not breaking up. So she may say one thing that has, doesn't even validate what the person who's been betrayed goes through.
Totally. Yeah. So you have to be careful. You answered one of my questions partly there, because I was saying, do people need a counselor for this? Can they just get your book? Is there a level that could just get the book, or needs a counselor?
You know what? It's of course the book is so helpful, but not even necessarily a counselor. I mean, you can't go through this alone. I mean, it's like, first of all, you're in a club you never wanted to be in. Yeah. And, you need to be with people who will not keep you stuck, who get it, who understand, and who don't just try to minimize it, and that's not to say, to have you drown in it, but it needs to be validated, and it needs to be worked through. Because think about it, things like belonging and trust. I mean, these are huge.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, I mean, if you asked any counselor,
Mhm.
psychologist, oh, do you deal with betrayal? 100% will say, yes, I deal with betrayal. Okay,
Yeah.
right. I mean, the same with abandonment, but I mean, is there specific questions asked to make sure you have the right person? And how do you find the right person for that person looking for a
Yeah.
person?
Well, and it's a great question. I mean, honestly, that's why I certify our coaches and practitioners, because
Okay, right. Okay, so where do they get one of those, and how do they find you? Give your website now. This would be appropriate.
yeah. I mean, it's all on the site. And what I do though in our community, we certify coaches and practitioners because yes, there's an element of you need to express your story for the sake of doing something with it. So all of our coaches and practitioners are certified in the 5 stages. So they know exactly where someone's stuck, and they also know how to keep moving them forward.
All right. So your website, they can find a list of people that would help them. How do they do that?
Within the community. So it's the PBT, as in Post Betrayal Transformation, the PBTinstitute.com. It's all there.
All right. And where do they find your book?
The book, Trust Again, you can just go right to Amazon. It's finally back in stock. It was sold out twice before it was ever released. So now I'm hearing it's back. So grab your copy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's an amazing topic. It really is. I mean, what I've been called to is people that have unexplainable illnesses, right? And I always say you have to go upstream and figure out what the causes are. But most often the cause is a perfect storm, which betrayal could be one of the storms. And if it is, it sounds like a nasty one. So, yeah.
The good news is they can heal from all of it.
I agree.
All of it.
I agree 100%. If you remove the interference, man, the body heals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Debi, thank you for being on. This was, I think you're going to get a lot of people, really seeking out help, and that's the purpose. That's why you came on. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, which was brought to you by Fastonic Molecular Hydrogen. Please check it out at getfastonic.com. We'll be back next week and every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern. We truly appreciate your support. You can always find us at cellularhealing.tv, and please remember to spread the love by liking, subscribing, giving an iTunes review, or sharing the show with anyone who may benefit from the information heard here. And as always, thanks for listening.